You know, when I'm bursting around in space, minding my own business, man, I really have to turn on those burst drive afterburners because apparently, according to this game, there's a lot of people that sort of try and fly into you, and you just have to boost across the screen and just get out of their way because, man, there's a lot of traffic in space. And this leads to Burst Drive, the second game for this week. It's kind of like a free roaming space shooter. Asteroids meets like sort of a 3D Galaga. It's a one screen space shooter, kind of like a twin stick, but not a twin stick. Graphics are fairly basic. It sort of reminds me of like early, like Amiga, just early, like I guess like mid 90s to like early 2000s. Like not games sort of released by like indie developers back then. That's what it looks like. The explosions are the coolest part of this game, in my opinion. They're quite nice to see, and there's like the sound effects, very rewarding, booming, sort of boom when they explode. The warping actually looks really nice too, so they did a good job there. So when you shoot, you generate heat, which is kind of interesting twist. So you have to buy cooling to get rid of the heat, or you have to drift to release the heat. You can dash as a last resort. Now, I wasn't really dashing. I found that dashing was like so sudden that like it's sort of like a desperation move rather than something you use like all the time. At least I couldn't fit it in. It was just too sudden, too far, and too yeah. It's too random, and like it's just too erratic, I found, to use it properly. One hit blows up your ship, so that's why like just doing a sudden burst is kind of tricky. You can upgrade your ship between stages at the shop. There's an optional 2-player co-op I didn't get a chance to try as well if you want to play with a buddy. Apparently there's 50 levels. After I played like one or two, I was good. They repeat and they get harder in various ways. I don't know what ways. The controls are fairly tight, but they can be kind of strange because like by default I was using the mouse, which is really weird for a shooter, instead of an Xbox 360 controller. So either or, like even when I switched to the controller over the mouse, I found it was like just kind of tricky to get into, because your ship, just steering your ship, but I think it felt like kind of floaty, kind of just off for me. I usually prefer like tight controls, but not so tight that it becomes stiff. And it just felt like, it's kind of like playing Solar Jetman. Like the greatest weakness of this game is definitely you're fighting the controls. And like just the gameplay itself is really repetitive. Like you're trying to float around with like the awkward mouse controls and shoot. It just feels like you're fighting for sure the controls more than anything. It costs for like $3.39, but you could probably get it for $1 or $2. This is sort of an older game, or actually no, I think it's been a few months. My bad. But it's not horrible. But yeah, outside the outside the explosions, there's just, I feel like there's lacking like that extra pizzazz like to it. It's just a solid retro title that you might play briefly, but I feel like, it's sort of like a +1 game. It's not horrible, it's not amazing, but like, if you get it for $1 or $2, it adds to your library. You have another shooter that you can try if you're bored. But I mean, there's a lot of great shooters on Steam, so I'd say like, yeah, I think 7's generous. I mean, for most people, if you have a nice collection of shooters, I'd say this is more of a 4 or 5. Check it out, watch some videos, see if you like it, but like it's sort of like a borderline miss for sure. So you'll just have to burst drive and play something else. So go burst it.